Hi, my name is Dr. Chantrise Holliman. Now, I don't share my title with you just because I want to share my title with you. I share my title with you because if my parents were to ever see this, they would be really upset if I didn't say that my name was Dr. Chantrise Holliman. So much so that even now, my father, when he calls me on the phone, he asks to speak to Dr. Chantrise Holliman, to which I respond gleefully, "Hi, Daddy, it's me." He's super proud, and I can hear the smile in his voice, so I entertain him. So hopefully, Mom and Dad, if you're watching this, you're pleased. Anyway, I like to be called Chantrise. So hi, my name is Chantrise, and I am a bilateral lower limb amputee. Now, if you're not quite sure what that means, that's okay. I'll explain it to you. See, apparently, when people hear the word bilateral, it gets confusing to some people, like to the guy who was super disappointed when I explained to him that being a bilateral amputee had absolutely nothing to do with my sexual preference. But I digress. So, what does it mean to be a bilateral lower limb amputee? Well, what it means is that at some point in the past, I've had both of my legs amputated to some degree. And for me, that's what happened last year in 2018. March 23rd, 2018, I actually had a massive heart attack and I died. According to my family, my heart stopped 9 times, and it took them 9 times to revive me and get me back stable. After that, I spent 2 months in the hospital recuperating. Well, trying to recuperate. See, while I was in the hospital, what they discovered was that I had lost the ability to use my legs. Subsequent doctors and neurologists told me that I had developed nerve damage. Now, no one can explain to me how that happened or why that happened, which is a bit of an issue, but that's what occurred. Number 2, they discovered that I had developed a set of infections, one in my right leg and one in my left foot, both of which subsequently resulted in me having to have my amputations. Again, one above knee on the right side, one below knee on the left side. Now for me, someone who was really active and someone who was actually preparing to run the 49th Peachtree Road Race here in Atlanta, it was devastating. I was exhausted, I was confused. Honestly, I was really pissed off because this was not supposed to happen, this was not part of my plan. And as I was preparing to speak to you today, I had to think about, are there any lessons that I learned from having my amputations? And it occurred to me that actually, while I'm recovering in the hospital and while I was recovering at home and getting used to my new normal, I discovered the secret to self-care. Want to know what it is? 2 words: cognitive flexibility. Now, you may not know what cognitive flexibility is, and that's okay. In a nutshell, cognitive flexibility is our ability to adjust our way of thinking when we are thrown a curveball. When things don't go the way that we think they're supposed to go, it's the way that we adjust how we process that information so that we can still come out on top. The best visual example that I can give you is football. I happen to love football. It's my favorite sport to watch. So you have a quarterback, and the quarterback has decided that he wants to run a passing play. So he takes the football, he pulls his arm back, and he goes to launch it to his receiver, but then he realizes that his receiver is no longer open. So at that point, he has 2 options. He can either find another open receiver and throw it to him, or he can hold onto the ball and try to scramble for some yards. What he can't do is he can't go along with the original plan, because if he does, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either he's going to get sacked or he's going to throw an interception. And if he does either one of those, neither he nor his teammates are going to be very pleased with him. So he has to think on his feet and make what I call a mid-course correction in order to get that done. That's what cognitive flexibility is. And it's super important. Why is it super important? Because we are educators. And as educators, there are 2 things that we cannot stand. 1, we hate to have our boat rocked, and 2, we hate to have our cheese moved. Unfortunately, we are in a profession where almost annually our boat is getting rocked to the point of it capsizing, and our cheese is being moved. Actually, it's getting eaten. There is no more cheese. So how do we combat that? Usually what happens is we get tired, we get stressed out, and we get depressed. And that's not healthy for us, and it's certainly not healthy for our students. Prime example of what happens when our cheese gets moved. Beginning of the school year, it's pre-planning. You're excited. You want to go to school. You want to be with your kids. Yay, beginning of the school year. You get to school. You're ready to decorate your room. You've always been in 409. In fact, you've been in 409 for the past 5 years. But then you get to school and realize that you're not in 409 anymore. You're in room 412. It's the week of pre-planning. It's the week before school starts. And the pre-planning agenda offers you no time to spend in your room. That's not true. You get the last 15 minutes at the end of the day on Friday before the school year starts. How you feeling? You're feeling pissed off. You're feeling depressed. You're feeling upset. You're stressed out. You've got stuff to do. So you can either do a couple of things. You can continue to be mad. You continue to be stressed. You can continue to be stressed out and depressed. Or you can do what I've learned to do considering my new normal. 3 things to help you with your self-care as it relates to cognitive flexibility. Number 1, you can change your response to the situation. When I sat on my sofa for the first time and really took a good look at where my legs used to be, I was really angry. I was angry at everybody, and I snapped on everybody who was around me. And for a while, I was content to be angry and on the sofa and to just while away the hours of the day just existing instead of living and thriving. So I didn't really want to do that. So I realized I had to change my response to my situation. I had to get up and say, you know what? I've been given these really crappy lemons. So I can either make lemonade or I can be really sad and really sour. I decided to make lemonade. Actually, that's not true. I decided to make the best damn lemon drop martini that the world had ever seen. And that's how I decided that I was going to live my life. So number 1, you have to change your response. Number 2, shift your perspective. It was really easy for me to look at all the things that I could no longer do instead of the things that I could still do. And because I was so angry and I was still coming out of the grieving process, because anytime you lose anything, whether it's a person or it's a limb, you go through the steps of grief. And what I had to do was I had to look and say, okay, I know this was really traumatic, but maybe this wasn't such a bad thing. Let me give you an example. I was the teacher who always had all of their sick days. I used to come to work sick as opposed to taking sick days and staying home to get better. When I had my amputations and I got sick, the very first thing that I noticed that it did was it slowed me down. It required me to take the time that I needed to heal and to get better. That was awesome because I'd never done that before. Number 2, another example. My husband and I are both educators, and we were both super busy. So much so that there were literally days when we would go by and not have a complete conversation because I was coming in or he was leaving, and we never had time to spend together. Since my amputations and since I got sick, my husband and I have become best friends again. We spend so much time together. Sometimes I think that he kind of wishes that we didn't spend so much time together, but it did a world of wonders for our marriage and our relationship. So, number 1, you have to change your response. Number 2, you have to shift your perspective. And number 3, and probably most importantly, you need to find your focus. Find something to focus on that's going to make you happy, that's going to make you feel good. That way you're not being affected by the negativity that's coming at you from all the changes that are going on. Another example. When I was at home and my family would get on my nerves, I would do one of 3 things. I would either 1, go for a run, 2, go to DSW and buy the sexiest heel that I could find, or number 3, I would get in my car and just go for a ride. Well, I can't go for a run anymore, and that's okay, although I really do believe I'm going to run again one day. Number 2, I don't really wear heels anymore, but I have a friend of mine who refers to my sexy red wheelchair as my red bottoms. So ladies, we all know what red bottoms are. So instead of wearing my red bottoms, now I roll in my red bottoms. And number 3, get in my car and go for a ride. Now you're probably thinking, she doesn't have any legs. how could she possibly drive? Well, that's where it gets really cool, because the people at the dealership fitted my car with hand controls. Very cool. So I actually accelerate and brake with my left hand, and I steer with my right hand. Now, you're probably also thinking, well, how do you get in the car? You're in a wheelchair. Another cool thing, my wheelchair comes apart. So I had to learn how to take apart my wheelchair. The wheels come off, the armrests come off, and I had to learn how to take that apart and get in the car so that I could get behind the wheel of my car that now has the hand controls so that I can drive. And you'll be happy to know that when I got here today, I got here by myself, in the car that I drove, with the wheelchair that I took apart and threw in the back seat. So, self-care is super important, especially if you want to live your best possible life. And the best way to practice self-care is to activate your cognitive flexibility. Again, number 1, change your response to the situation. Number 2, shift your perspective. And number 3, find your focus. Those are the gifts that my amputations gave to me, and they're the gifts that I now give to you.